A compelling detective story, a cloak and dagger action, and a romantic drama, all these stories were taken from real life. The history of Kazakhstan is inseparable from the world history. Reflections on history, our version.
The people of Kazakhstan, the battle for Berlin. In the lair of the enemy, the Reichstag is almost invisible. This is how the wars end, while the memory is alive. Almaty, a concert dedicated to Great Victory Day. People solemnly bring in the hall a capsule with soil from the Moscow region. There, where in distant 1941 the Panfilov warriors fought bloody battles. And a copy of the banner that Bakimjan Koshkarbayev hosted above the Reichstag. It's handed to the grandson of the hero. Moscow and Berlin, October the 29th, 1941. Commander Rokossovsky of the 16th Army wrote on the map, the frontline correspondent, "While fighting near Moscow, one must think of Berlin. Soviet troops will definitely be in Berlin." The Kazakhs showed unprecedented heroism and courage on all fronts of World War II. Kenjibai Madianov participated, for example, in the capture of the Berlin Town Hall. Marshal Zhukov wrote about this. Sagadat Nomagabambetov, a hero of the Soviet Union, also participated in the capture of the Berlin Town Hall. Battle of Berlin, Batirs of the Great Patriotic War, Kazakhstanis. The contract was signed and she died. It was a victory which takes special place in the history of Kazakhstan. The Kostanay Rifle Brigade went on a path of combat, liberating the whole of Western Europe as it reached Berlin. Chapter 1. In the Lair of the Enemy. Not only divisions and armies go to Berlin. The bodies of all innocent victims are coming from the mass graves from trenches and ditches. The fields of Majdanek and the trees of Vitebsk on which the Germans hang their unfortunate victims, and the boots of those killed in gas chambers and shot men, women and children, all of them go to Berlin. Ilya Ehrenberg. From Kostanay to Berlin, there are 3,700 kilometers. If you go by foot, in a straight line and along a good road, it'll take a month or two. They walked, but not in a straight line, and their roads were not simple. Kostanay, the Museum of Local History. 73,000 people went to war from our region. About 37,000 never returned. Starting from December the 12th, 1941, the 151st Separate Rifle Brigade was being formed. Later, on its basis, the 150th appeared, and here in Kostanay, the soldiers were given a banner with a word that they were supposed to set up over Berlin. Nobody knew then that the farewell message would be fulfilled. On the banner of the victory that fluttered over the Reichstag, it was written, 150 Idritskaya, the rifle division of the Kutuzov Order of the Second Degree. They were the first who hoisted the banner over the Reichstag. The 150th Division was formed in our city of Kostanay. The attack on the lair of the enemy, that's how people called Berlin, began on April the 16th at the Silo Heights, one of the most powerful fortified areas on the way to the capital of the Third Reich. Hitler had high hopes. For courage, it was me and the commander on the Silo Heights that killed 2 tanks. The heights were taken on April the 18th and then Berlin. The Berlin post of the Nazis, about 300,000 people, 3,000 guns and 250 tanks. They defended the city fiercely, a massive tricks, a complex system of fortifications, air raids, snipers, literally from every window. They fought for every house, alley and bridge. The river Spree flows through Berlin. And before fighting, we went to take pictures. Told Nadezhda. My friend Shorochka stayed in the tent. She washed the bandages. We had had an air raid. I looked at her and she looked at me and she didn't say anything back to me. She was probably in shock. She'd lost both her legs. Only a small patch was left from that tent. We wrapped her into what was left and sent her to the nearest hospital. After that, I never heard anything about her again.
Завернули этой грязной тряпкой, ее положили на повозку и отправили. Больше про Шуру я ничего не слыхала.
The River Spree, the last water barrier, on April the 29th. Only a few dozen meters left until the Reichstag itself. Chapter 2. The Reichstag is almost invisible. When dawn came, everyone approached the windows hoping to see the Reichstag, but they didn't see anything. Some building was in the way. The cadet asked why they did not come. The grey building was in our way. Yes, it was. It was the Reichstag, and it never occurred to him that this house in front of the windows was the same building. Vasily Subbotin, How Will the Wars End? Berlin, the square in front of the Reichstag building. A peaceful picture, a green lawn, and tourists. The first stone in the building of the German parliament was laid by the Kaiser Wilhelm in 1884, and construction took 10 years. And then the famous story. World War I, the Kaiser suffered a crushing defeat. In 1933, the Weimar Republic fell and Hitler came to power. But in the political life of Nazi Germany, the Reichstag did not play a special role, since in 1941 it only served at the base of the Air Force, which was led by Hermann Göring. However, for the Soviet soldiers, the Reichstag was a symbol of Nazi Germany. Soldiers had been dreaming about reaching Berlin for a long time. Only a few finally made it. Usk-Kamenigo's resident Nikolai Molostov is one of them. He sorts out his medals and reflects on the past. Many of the boys who served with me died. Well, God saved me. He says that his biography is ordinary. He fought at the front and was wounded, and then he ended up at an artillery unit as an intelligence officer. I got this medal for Berlin. These were terrible battles for the Reichstag. There were so many fires in the city that the night had turned into day. The area in front of the Reichstag was surrounded with trenches. The terrain was perfectly shot through, carefully prepared for defense. The Reichstag itself, a real fortress, with walls 1.5 meters in height, with bricked windows, and only the trunks of machine guns visible. The first banner on the building appeared on April the 30th. I took out the flag and wrote our names in a corner with a chemical pencil. Grigory Bulatov, Koshkarbayev, 674 Regiment. Bulatov says, "You did the right thing, comrade lieutenant. What if they kill us and no one will know who we were and where we were here?" The shells tore the stones of the square. Bullets drew a cobblestone. At home, houses burned. Little Bulatov, a little frightened, still a young boy, his uniform was big for him and was a little long. The headgear was also bigger. He was circling somewhere under the armpit of Koshkarbayev. "What do we do?" asked Bulatov, trustingly looking into his eyes. Vasily Subbotin, How the Wars End. Then I said to Grisha, "Grisha, we're not going to die. We're going to carry out the assignment and put up the red flag." The flag was hoisted, but we fought for the building for another 2 days. In the basement, 1,500 Nazis, throwing grenades at our soldiers. And when they finally realized they won't be able to win the building back, they set it on fire. On May the 1st, it was announced to the whole world that the Reichstag was taken. In London, Paris, and New York, prayer services were held on this occasion, and Soviet soldiers fought in a burning building. They stood firm, and the banner of victory, the one that Bulatov and Koshkarbayev hoisted, was not alight. And in this fight, our countryman Ilya Sianov really demonstrated his character. He was an accountant in the village of Semyozernoye, in the Kostanay region. On the day of the assault, Ilya Sianov had to take command of the regiment. In total, the fighting for the Reichstag lasted only 4 days. Then the Nazi command asked the parliamentarians to negotiate for surrender. They asked to send the general, but they sent Sergeant Sianov. Negotiations took place in the metro station. They asked, "Will they shoot?" I said about our conditions, and from ourselves that if they honestly capitulated, everyone would be given the opportunity to return home. Someone asked, "Is Stalin also here?" I said importantly, Yes, Comrade Stalin is here. It made a great impression on them. From the memoirs of Ilya Syanov. Incidentally, it was Syanov's stormtroopers who provided the fire support to Meliton Kantaria and Melikhan Yegorov. They were accompanied by Alexei Berest, who was undeservedly forgotten. For a long time, it was believed that they were the first to establish the banner of victory over the Reichstag. But it happened a few hours after the banner was installed by Koshkarbayev and Bulatov. Chapter 3. This is how the wars end. The victorious issue of Socialist Kazakhstan on the May 9th, with the cover of Stalin's photo and the message that Germany had capitulated. This battle is included in the Guinness Book of World Records as the largest in history. Almost 2 million guns were shot, 36,000 tons of deadly metal fell on the city. The fighting continued unabated for 10 days and nights. As soon as Berlin fell on May the 2nd, everyone just slept. We were asleep, everyone was. Soldiers and commanders, right there near the Reichstag. We slept in the pack, right in the square, head to head, without waking up for 2 days. Vasily Subbotin, How the Wars End. Berlin, 1945. 75% of buildings were destroyed with piles of garbage and smells of burning, blooming lilacs and the autographs of victory. On the walls of the Reichstag, there is an inscription. We are the Panfilov Guardsmen. Thank you, Dad, for Valenki. Batya, so the soldiers called General Panfilov, who did not reach Berlin, died in the battles near Moscow. Why were they grateful for Valenki? Because being a caring commander, Panfilov did everything to ensure that people in Moscow, even under severe frost, were dressed and fed properly. When we approached the Reichstag, we began to sing who we were. All these columns were broken, covered in dust and dirt.
Колонны были разбиты, пыль, грязь.
Nadezhda went to the front as a volunteer in 1941, just after school, a 16-year-old girl. Infantry, frontline specialty, cook and nurse, wounded in the battles for Berlin. There were 3 of us, Klara Pachele, Tonya Bagransaev, and I. We found an apartment and stayed there for 1 night. Then they went for a walk around Berlin.
Из-за угла снайпер эсэсовец.
A sniper of the SS shot at Klara from around the corner and she died in our hands after the victory.
Она после победы погибла на наших руках.
The danger was also in the fact that many of those victorious days were in a state of euphoria.
Надо было обязательно уберечь.
It was necessary to save the soldiers who were shooting everywhere, shouting, "Victory, victory, victory!"
И все остальное. Победа, победа, победа.
After the victory under the treaty with the Allies, the Reichstag was taken under the occupation zone of Great Britain. Allies appeared on the streets of Berlin. There were French soldiers and Englishmen. Everyone said something. They sold wine and old uniforms, at worst chewing gum. The Germans carried clothes, jewelry and cameras. In exchange they took money and most of all bread, canned food, tobacco, stewed meat. For the first time, we so closely saw our allies. They came here because of the Elbe. And the same night we left. Vasily Subbotin, How the Wars End. We met with the English on the Elbe. I also remember the soldiers said, "That's fair. We won." And they came to take our trophies. Epilogue. While the memory is alive. It was recently calculated that if all the dead Soviet people had participated in the parade, it would have lasted 57 days and nights. According to statistics, the losses of only Kazakhstan during the World War II are almost equal to the military losses of both the 2 allied armies of the United States and Great Britain together. The name of each person, everyone who made this victory at the front, everyone who made this victory back at home, and every sacrifice that was made on the way to this victory is important.
Каждой жертвой, которая была положена на пути к этой победе.